Hello and welcome back to Voidtoon. Today we will be discussing the player rankings for Survivor 47. We will be ranking them based on their strategic ability, their social awareness, and how likely they would perform on a return. I'll also be mixing in some general player opinions along the way. With that, let's start off with number 18. I have TK. Going into the season, I thought TK would do a lot better. However, he completely mismanaged his relationships with those who he appeared thought were on the bottom, like Sue and Caroline, and mismanaged his relationship with Tiana completely. He also thought he had Gabe on his side, but that was never true. The only relationship he was able to solidify was with Kyle. All of that culminated with an early exit in the second episode. I truly believe TK was the worst player of the season, but not a completely horrible player at the same time. Now moving on, at number 17, I actually have the first boot of the season. I have John. I don't believe John actually did anything wrong this wrong in the game, his one round in the game. I think he was just placed in a very unfortunate situation on the God tribe. If he was on the Lava tribe or the Tuku tribe, he would have most likely had a better position starting off the game in. But because he was on Gada, he was immediately put on the bottom because he was the oldest member of his tribe. I will say that he should have tried harder to, like, maybe get Andy out instead of Annika, who was at the majority in that round. He was sociably liked, but it was not enough for him to stay. For those reasons, I have John at number 17. Now, number 16, I have Asia, our very own Rob Has a Podcaster, at number 16. Asia was someone that going into the season, just like TK, I thought would do very well this season. She had the survivor knowledge. She knew what she was definitely one of the most hardcore strategists going in. However, and I think this had a lot to do with the fact she went on a journey day one, so she wasn't able to immediately bond with her fellow tribe members. Asia was very good at making bonds with people, but not to the point where they were willing to protect her. Like, she had Saul 100%, and she thought she had players like Keyshawn, Teeny, Genevieve. And although Teeny was willing to go to bat for her to try to get like a Saul out over her, it was not enough to save her, as the other members of her alliance who turned against her. It was also her unwillingness to vote for Saul or even turn it on Saul. That was her undoing at the end. Now, number 15, I have Tiana. I had TK as my male winner pick going into the season. I had Tiana as my female winner pick going into the season, and they are at number 18 and 15. This was not a good season for me. But anyway, I think Tiana, similar to John, who was placed in a very bad position on her initial starting tribe. However, unlike John, she was able to survive a few rounds and even make it to almost the jury. She made it to the merge, but Tiana was very good at making friendships and bonds with people, but they did not result in anything. As soon as the Tuku tribe formulated, it was the guys in TK and Kyle on one side, and the women and Sue and Caroline with Gabe on the other. She had to make a decision to either side with the men or side with the opposing alliance. She decided to choose the opposing alliance, and vote out TK, who completely mismanaged her. However, going into the next round, I thought they would his Tiana was in a good position. She was gonna be like a 4 or a 3. His 3 sign was Gabe, Caroline, and Sue, but immediately Gabe wanted to work with Kyle more than Tiana, and he wanted Tiana out next. So either way, Tiana was in a losing position, whether she sided with TK and Kyle or made the decision she ultimately made. And although I think her luck could have turned around going into the merge, it never really formulated. And as soon as the as soon as the split tribal happened, where half of the tribe was safe, and then Rachel was going to be the target, but she left thanks to an advantage. Tiana really didn't even know that she was in a bad position in the entire game because she thought Gabe was going to be the next one out. She really thought Gabe would be leaving, but she was blindsided in a position where everyone else around her, even Kyle, who tried to save her, voted her out. There's not much else to say. Tiana was in a bad position no matter what she started out the game like. Now, number 14, I have Rome. Rome is Rome. Let's just say that. Rome definitely was in a bad position to begin with. He had an alliance member in Genevieve, but that was pretty much it. The rest of the tribe hated his guts. The only reason he was able to make it to the Mergatory was because he was collecting advantages left and right on like they were Mario Party power-ups. He was able to dictate and control the votes for both the Asia and the Kashan rounds. And he was definitely involved in them, but his allies were going along with him purely out of they had no other options. And he was not helping his favors at a social level as he was very petty and disrespectful, especially to those who he deemed on the bottom. And when it came to the merge, he did play his hand a bit when he approached Kyle, but like he, I think either way, Rome would have been a target no matter what. So I don't really fault him too much for that. But there is something to be said with you were able to control and dictate your initial starting tribe, but as soon as you hit the Mergatory, you meet all the other people, your empire falls down. The end of the Roman Empire. For all those reasons, I have Rome at number 14. Now, at number 13, I have Annika. I think Annika started off the game in a good position as she was in the majority. She seemed to be the head of the snake, having all the women on her side and having Sam as well. And she had two easy outs in John and Andy. They got out John and Andy would have been the next one to go. However, she mismanaged her relationship with Sam, or Sam mismanaged her relationship with her. Anyway, they formed a sort of soft rivalry where Sam was definitely gunning for her, but Annika wasn't gunning for him, as she still wanted Andy out, and she thought that they were still in an alliance and were going to work together moving forward. However, that was not the case, and she definitely was duped by the likes of Sam and Andy into believing that everything was the same. And in a position where she needed a vote like Sierra, as she had Rachel locked in, she wasn't able to secure that vote, even though they were supposedly really tight. Like she was Sierra's next closest ally in contest with Sam. However, Sierra didn't side with her and decided to go with Sam and Andy. So, while I think Annika definitely had potential, it sort of was fizzling out towards the end. So for those reasons, I have Annika at number 13. Now going to number 12, I have our last preacher, I have Keyshawn. Keyshawn set himself up really nicely, squarely in the middle, aligned closely with both Teeny and Genevieve. And for the first couple episodes, his job was really to try to manage Rome. Like, Rome was definitely the target of especially Keyshawn. However, once Rome acquired all those advantages, he had to align with Rome for the following vote, was gain either Asia or Assault out, with Asia ending up being the vote. Then we move on to what ended up turning into his boot round, where he tried to make a play against Rome rather than going for Saul. I'm not necessarily sure if that was the right call. However, his real mistake was putting out Genevieve's name, saying that Genevieve wouldn't mind into that her name would be out there, which is a complete misread on Keyshawn's part, because if Keyshawn and Genevieve really were that close, he would know that Genevieve would not be appreciative of her name being flown out there, even if it's a misdirect, especially by one of her closest allies. For the rest of the day, it didn't seem like Keyshawn was aware that the plan had turned against her once Rome went to tell Genevieve that Keyshawn threw her name out. It wasn't until Tribal where Keyshawn was blindsided. I have Keyshawn as the highest ranked preacher because up until his vote out, he was always in a good position and made some small mistakes and really just faltered at the end. Now, going to number 11, I have Kyle. At the very beginning, Kyle was at the bottom with TK. Once TK left, it seemed like, particularly like Gabe, was more willing to work with Kyle long term. Although Sue held a vendetta against him the rest of the whole game. So that was a mismanagement on his part as well as hers. He tried to save Tiana in a position where he would have been the other vote out in the pre-jury. And then once we got to the merge, he started racking up immunity after immunity after immunity, making him the biggest threat. Not even from oh, this guy's going to win if he gets to the end, but just as a sort of, this guy is a real threat to win every single immunity moving forward. So even though he wasn't the vote out the first time he was vulnerable, he wasn't so lucky the next time, and it was just a combination of pure challengeability, and he was a very sociable and likable guy, so I'll give him credit for that. But anyway, Kyle just completely mismanaged his threat management, and had once he won his the first two immunities back to back, he had virtually no way of getting to the end without someone trying to take him out. It was sloppy gameplay at best. Now going into number 10, I have Gabe. Gabe really set himself up well, placing himself in the middle between the TK and Kyle alliance and the Sue and Caroline, although he formulated that alliance himself and was the orchestrator between all the moves between the three of them, first taking out TK and then wanting to go for Tiana next. Once Tuku made it to the merge, Gabe was the focal point of the whole Tuku alliance, and he seemed to have a real sort of pulse on the game. First going for Rome, and then wanting to go for Rachel as he believed that she was the biggest threat at going to the actual jury for portion. Once Rachel left, he then cannibalized Tiana, which he wanted to do anyway. Then the game got a bit rocky for him as people really started to hone in on him as a real contender and the head of the Tuku Alliance. And for the first few rounds, like, Gata wanted Gabe out. There were some people looking to target him during the Saul round. And then finally, once it became clear that Tuku had the most numbers and they really wanted to get the biggest threat out among them of the people who were available, which Kyle wasn't, Gabe was the next best choice, and Gabe was blindsided. I give him credit for his strategic ability. He also seemed like a much better social player than we were shown or what we saw would happen in preseason. But once again, just like Kyle, he completely mismanaged his threat level, made it clear that he was the head of the Tuku Alliance power player, and therefore people wanted him out. For all those reasons, I have Gabe at number 10. At number 9, I have Sierra. I do think Sierra is a good player. She just made wrong moves throughout the game. She set herself up in the middle along with Sam, who Sam were both working with him and working with Rachel and Annika, who were the breadwinners. The John round was easy, no sweat on her back, and from then on it was a matter of where should Sierra go? Should she go with the women and Annika and Rachel, or should she go with the men and it's just Sam and Andy? Sam wanted to keep Andy. Annika wanted to get rid of Andy. So it was really up to Sierra which direction not only the guy tried to go with, but her own game. And ultimately, when it came down to it, she chose to go with Sam and Andy over Rachel and Annika, blindsiding Annika. The show made it seem like that this was the wrong decision, that she should have gone with the woman. And like, I don't disagree that that was the move that was more optimal for her, but there was also benefits to going with not really Andy, but going with Sam, moving into the merge because it seemed like Sam would be the more likely player that not only people would align with going into the merge, but also someone that people would target over her, theoretically. She was pretty safe going into both the Rome and the Tiana votes. She wasn't involved in the Tiana vote, but she would have been fine nonetheless. And then we get to the round where she went out in. She did multiple things wrong this round, especially when it came to Andy. Majority of the people wanted a God member out, whether it was Sam, whether it was Rachel, whether it was her. And even beginning at the beginning of the merge, she both her and Sam mismanaged their relationship with Andy, made it seem like he was expendable to them. And this turned Andy against Sam and Sierra, and he was waiting for the opportunity to take one of them out, which came about this round. And once again, just like Kyle, just like Gabe, threat management was her mistake because the target was definitely going to either be her or Sam. But the perception was she was the better social player. She was the head of the goddess snake. People wanted to cut her off more than Sam or even a Rachel, who were both big threats also in the game. I think Sierra is a good player. You definitely saw me see more of her going forward. However, it just wasn't in the cards this round, and she was voted out. Now at number 8, we have Sue. Loyalty was her game the entire time. She was completely loyal to Gabe and Caroline in the merge, in the pre-jury. He that helped her remove TK from the game, and then from then on, she had a vendetta against Kyle. She wasn't a fan of Tiana either, and that was fine as they didn't go to tribal the entire game, the entire pre-jury, pre-merge. Going to the merge, she was kind of in a vulnerable position as her name was getting thrown out a bit as a member to take out from the Tuku Alliance. However, once Gabe left, her name was never thrown out again, as she was in a pretty safe position, probably as a goat to take to an end, as it seemed like she was good socially, but no one saw her as a real threat to win the game, which I know was not her intention, and it was just how she came about. She made it to the very end with an Idol played at Final 5, however, she made it to Final 3 but had no real shot at winning the game. So, ultimately, that's why I have her at number 8 due to that inability to receive or convince any jury votes. Now at number 7, I have Sue's right-hand woman, I have Caroline. Caroline played a very good game. It seemed like she was the most safe throughout the entire game up until Operation Italy, where she was eh, she was initially on the bottom when the whole bro alliance of TK and Kyle tried to take control of the Tuku game, where Sue and Caroline were at the bottom. However, that was quickly overturned, and Caroline seemed to be at the very top as her name was not getting thrown around at all. She came into the merge quite clean, and it seemed like people wanted to align with her, and she was willing to go with whichever way benefited her. And her game definitely changed once Gabe was voted out, and she partook in that. I really do think Caroline was like a good third or fourth person who had the best chance to win the game, and she was not seen as a threat at all throughout the entire game up until Operation Italy, where the original target was going to be Rachel, but then she won an individual immunity, which then prompted Sam, Andy, and Genevieve to take out Caroline as the next best option. So, even though I believe that Caroline played the best all around game out of everyone here, it was certain mistakes at the very end that cost her, and even though she could have made it to Final 3 if she wasn't voted out here, I'm not 100% sure how she would convince the jury to vote for her, especially over players such as like a Genevieve, a Sam, a Rachel, even an Andy. So, for those reasons, I have Caroline at number 7. Alright, now we are getting to the upper echelon of these players, and now at number 6, I have Saul. Saul played a very good game, who came into the game and was in the initial majority with Asia, Kishan, Teeny, and even though they weren't necessarily aligned, he did have a connection with Genevieve. However, when Rome started gaining those advantages, he found himself on the bottom with Asia and narrowly escaped being eliminated. However, he turned all that around in the following round. While he was going to potentially going to be the next one out, he turned it around thanks to help with Eve, and who got out, who was arguably the most insulated player of the tribe in Keyshawn. From there, her it was either going to be Saul or Rome, but it seemed like the tides would have turned towards Saul being safe and excavating Rome. Once we hit the merge, the game really turned in a positive way for Saul. He managed to convince the Lavos to stay together with Lavos being Genevieve and Teeny, and they formed a tripartite trio, who they did have to lose Rome there, but Rome was never a number for Saul and was a direct antagonist to Saul, who was actively trying to get him voted out this round. So getting Rome out here was crucial for Saul. And then we go to the next round, where Saul managed to find an advantage, where where he could save a potential ally at the next tribal, to where he decided to choose to save Rachel, which greatly benefited him. All of the it was between Rachel and Tiana, so he did lose a ally, but he saved the more valuable ally. And then the next round, it seemed like the Gathas and the Lavos were going to align together. However, the Lavos and specifically Saul and Genevieve didn't want that and were wanted to vote Agata out. It was either going to be Rachel, Sam, or Sierra. All the Lavos had different ideas and plans. However, Saul's plan was one that got employed in taking out Sierra. However, next round it was obviously the round that he got voted out in, where Genevieve turned on him and got the entire tribe to turn on him. It seemed like Saul had potential allies and alliances that could have taken him far into the game. It was just this particular round where he was at the most in the most danger that got him eliminated from Survivor 47. But all in all, I just think Saul played a very good game, and I'm curious to see what could happen on a return. Next, we have Teeny. Teeny played not the greatest strategic game. However, her social game was what really impressed me. Because of her social relationships, she was able to become a center point in the initial Alavo tribe, aligning with Keyshawn and Genevieve, and that took her all the way till the first tribal, where she had to make a decision between Saul and Asia to vote to eliminate, since they couldn't get out Rome. She initially wanted to save Asia and vote out Saul. However, scenes just did not play out like that. So she had to eliminate Asia, but she didn't even eliminate Asia. She voted for Saul simply because her emotions wouldn't allow her to vote for Asia, which you can argue that against her, and you can definitely argue against her entire game, to where her biggest mistake in the game is she just could not do what was required in order to play the game, really. The next round, she was blindsided by Genevieve, she couldn't vote, and Keyshawn was eliminated. And even though she should have been on the bottom from that point on, she was actually still in the middle because Genevieve wanted to protect her and protect them more than either Saul or Rome. The merge did change a bit it changed their game a bit, their game a bit in the when they first aligned. They managed to get out Rome. That was good. They managed to stay safe during the Tiana vote. That was also good. During the big Gata turn, where Sierra was voted out, they wanted to take out Sam, but couldn't get that to happen. And then immediately afterwards, Saul was taken out, her number one ally from Lavo, other than Genevieve, who turned against her and didn't even try to include her in the plan. And even though they should have been on the bottom, they were relatively safe throughout the rest of the entire game. The only person that tried to make a move against them was Kyle, but that was never a plan that caught any steam. Teeny was a player that should have been in this very bad position because she was constantly being outmaneuvered, outplayed, on the bottom, blindsided, and yet, because of their incredible social game, they were rarely even targeted or even put in a position of jeopardy. That got them all the way to the Final Four, where she would not have beaten Rachel. I'm not even sure if they would have had a chance against Sam, but they would have had a better chance at getting some votes better than, say, like an Andy or a Sue. For those reasons, I have Teeny at number 5. Now we're here at number 4. At number 4, we have Andy. Andy started off the game in one of the worst ways any player in Survivor has ever started off the game, with a complete meltdown in front of everyone. However, after that and surviving the first vote, he was able to turn his game around and to really solidify his strategic abilities. He was able to create a close bond with Sam, which had prompted Sam to keep him. And even though it probably wasn't in Sierra's best interest, he was also able to convince her to go with him as well, which allowed them to blindside Monica. Going to the merge, he was thrown out by his allies as a potential backup target, to that didn't create a target on him afterwards, so, like, he wasn't a constant name for a backup target. Instead, he used that as motivation to try to make a big move and try to make a name for himself, which prompted him to go after Sam and Sierra, and they were able to not only take out Sierra, but place Sam firmly on the bottom for the rest of the game. From there, he was able to ride the waves while creating close bonds and allies with the likes of Genevieve, Rachel, Caroline, Teeny, you name it. It, it he was a part of he was part of the Saul move, he was part of the Gay move, he was part of the Kyle move, which then prompted Operation Italy. He knew he was on the bottom of his new alliance of underdogs. I'm using air quotes. So he took the opportunity and formulated a genius level plan with Genevieve and Sam to take out the biggest threat in the game in Rachel. There were so many ways that this move should not have worked, but the fact that it did is honestly astounding. And Andy's part in the plan was to make it seem like he was not he was nervous about Genevieve having an idol and wanting to make a move on her, which allowed him to seal the Operation Italy plan with his vote flip. Next round, he did play it well. He thought he was getting Rachel on his side to sort of ease her into the jury portion because Rachel had lost immunity, she was the biggest target, and he viewed it as his opportunity to vote her out. Unbeknownst to him that she had an idol and was going to play it, and due to his bolstering of his game to her, which was one of his biggest mistakes, because up till this point, he had this perception that he wasn't playing a very good game, that it was his joke to take to the end. He probably should have kept all that he had to himself for Final Tribal, but he didn't, which prompted Rachel to idol him out. Andy played a good game. However, his massive misstep at the beginning of the game, as well as the fact that I'm not 100% sure that he could have ever gotten the jury votes to win the game. The jury was not a fan of him. They constantly dismissed him. he was called GOAT several times. If he made it to Final Tribal, I'm not sure that he could have given a Final Tribal speech that was able to sway anyone. So, for all those reasons, pros and cons, I have Andy at number 4. Now, number 3, I have our winner, Rachel. Rachel was at the bottom of her initial Gata tribe, and when she made it to the merge, she wasn't in conversation for the initial mergatory at boot, but during the split tribal, she was in a horrible position where the Tukus were going to take her out if not for the fact that Saul gave her the advantage to leave. From there, she was considered a target, like she was the third option in the Sam and Sierra split vote. And, however, from there, she was able to integrate herself with the majority in getting out big targets, so like Saul, Gabe, Kyle. But from the final 7 on, she needed to have immunity because otherwise she was going to be taken out. She needed those immunity wins. She needed her hidden immunity idol in order to make it past those rounds. I will say one of the things that she did really well and what other great winners haven't even most of them haven't done themselves was getting other people to bolster their games in order to win at the end, which was one thing that Rachel really did well. I think honestly the fact that she was on the bottom throughout this game and that she needed those immunities, those immunity idol those immunity idols, whether through finding them or winning, is the reason why I have her at number 3 versus 2 or 1. And now we're here at the end, the final 2 between Genevieve and Sam. Both played very similar games, being strong in the front and having to play from the bottom in the back. So it all comes down to the final result, who outlasted the other. So for that reason, Genevieve is number 2. Genevieve played a very strong game in the very beginning, aligning closely with Rome, as well as forming a tight-knit group with Teeny and Kishan. She also seemed to have individual relationships with Saul and Asia, and so therefore no one targeted her. But her closeness to Rome did provide a hindrance when Asia wanted to vote Genevieve out because she couldn't get out Rome. Not the problem, but luckily her allies stuck with her over Asia, and Asia was voted out. The next episode was one of the biggest moves this season when Genevieve stuck to her guns and took out Kashan. She managed to get Rome and Saul to a ceasefire on each other to take out Kishan, arguably the most secured player on the Lavo tribe. She then cultivated individual relationships with Teeny, Rome, and Saul, so she was now the most insulated player in the entire game, which was incredible considering she just made a really big move, and it seemed like everyone who was involved or even not involved in Teeny's case was more willing to take shots at each other rather than her. She took that momentum into the merge, creating a strong 3% alliance with Saul and Teeny, which was important since Rome was about to get voted out. I don't fault her for that. She was trying wanted Rome out eventually anyway. I'm not sure that there was much she could have done to save Rome in the first place, so no sweat there. She then formed relationships with the Gaga people as well as the Tuku people, although we didn't see that happen on screen. And she took her many allegiances to these big alliances and had her pickings with who she wanted out. She wanted Rachel out from Gada, but any big target from Gada was doable, and so for Sierra was voted out. From there, the next round was another big moment move for Genevieve when she believed she could get Saul out. Saul was probably one of the most insulated, protected players in the game, and she saw a rare opportunity to get Saul out. Now, was the Saul move a bit early? Probably yes. Yes, and could she have gone for players before, players like a Rachel or even a Gabe at this point? Perhaps over Saul, who wanted to keep her safe. But if she was right on this rare chance to get Saul out, then this could have been a good move. From here on, she was at the bottom. During the gay vote or the cow vote, she was the decoy slash backup vote. And then came Operation Italy, one of the biggest move of the game, where she, Sam, and Andy cultivated a collaborative plan to get Rachel out of the game. Unfortunately, that didn't work because Rachel wanted individual immunity, but they took out the best option in Caroline, making a spectacular once in a lifetime move. She then won the individual immunity the next round, which round keeping her safe. She tried to get out her number one enemy in Rachel, who was probably the only other person that could have stood a chance against her at Final Tribal. But unfortunately, Rachel had an immunity idol and used that idol to idol out Genevieve's ally in Andy. Next round, she was dead woman walking. She lost the immunity challenge. Her idol that she was holding onto was revealed to be fake, and she was voted out at the final five. Genevieve was a very powerful player. She's a very influential player here, and my God, I know why she's one of the stars of the season. I have Genevieve higher than higher than like a Teeny or an Andy because I know if she was able to get to Final Tribal, she could have won this game. The only person that may have beaten her at the end was Rachel, but those two were never going to the end together. And so it was either Rachel or Genevieve, and just Rachel was able to get 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 further than Genevieve. I have her higher than Rachel because Rachel needed to be immune for all those rounds because otherwise she would have been voted out. Genevieve was vulnerable for multiple rounds where she was a target and managed to stay. So for all those reasons, I have Genevieve at number two. At number one, who did not place the number one, I have a runner-up, Sam. Sam started the game in the top position being the glue guy of the God tribe being in the middle with Sierra, and he was able to get his way both in the John vote and in the Annika vote, having both Sierra and Andy align with him to get out the targets that he wanted out. And that momentum moved forward into the merge where he was able to get out Rome. And then things started to dip where he thought he had a strong alliance with the Lavo people and the goddess. However, the Lavos wanted to turn on him and Sierra, viewing them as the tightest duo and the most powerful. And The prior round was Rome. He completely mismanages his relationship with Andy, making him feel like he was expendable, and Andy turned on both him and Sierra, and it was just pure luck, really, that they chose to vote out Sierra over Sam. But from here, he was on the bottom, but he played it really well. Like, he should have been taken out probably the round after in the Saul or even the Gabe vote, but he was able to make moves while on the bottom to keep himself safe, which were really impressive. Like, and people did want to target him, but they just simply weren't able to. And this continued on up until Operation Italy, where Sam was involved in one of the greatest moves of the season with Genevieve and Andy to take out Rachel. I said this before, Rachel won immunity, so that couldn't have happened. However, they took out their best next option in Caroline. And the next round, again, another scenario where Sam probably should have been the one to be voted out. But Rachel decided to take out Andy instead, sparing Sam for another round. And again, Sam should have probably been the one taken uh, out this round too. However, they chose to take out Genevieve, who was probably an equally dangerous player, who Sam was able to paint a slightly bigger target on her rather than himself, prompting the likes of Rachel and Sue to vote her out over him, which was really impressive. Final four, fire making. Unless you win the immunity, Sam was going to. Unless he won the immunity, he was going into fire. He did and managed to win, getting to final tribal. I was really impressed with this. He put on a really good final tribal performance, where even I was thinking, could Sam convince the jury to vote for him and not Rachel? Like, I was thinking that for a bit. Ultimately, that didn't happen. Rachel won. Kudos to her. But Sam definitely, in my opinion, and the statistics of it all, play the best game of Survivor 47. And that is it. That is all the entire player ranking for Survivor 47. We be done, people. We be done. I really like this cast of characters, strategists, players. I really hope to see some of them on 50. Side note, I want to see Genevieve and Andy on 50. So until 48 or even sooner, there's still more challenge stuff going on with Battle of the Eras and the newly released All Stars Rivals. So until next time, Void Tune out.